So there are certainly times in reviewing different speakers, I feel like I can live with this speaker, or I feel like, well, can it get better than this? I know it can sound different than this, but can it get better than this? And the Paradigm 120H is one of those speakers. So Paradigm is one of those companies that's based in Canada. So they are crafted in Canada, Canadian made. Awesome. So I'm based in Canada. They are just like about 45 minutes away from me. So I actually visited their factory before, and I'm going to do a tour guide as well on this channel, hopefully in the future. But I saw like their whole facility. They have anechoic chambers, like really large facility. You're not talking about like some garage, speaker builder here. This is a legit company that has existed for a very long time. I don't know exactly how long, but they have real technology going on, and you're gonna see that in this speaker. None of the design choices are because of a philosophy or untested hypothesis that we often see in the audio world, but actually tested, actually lab tested, and anechoic chamber measurements shown to show that each and every move made on this speaker is done so to better fidelity and get you closer to the sound that you're looking for. So let's dive in and see some of the things that this company has done to the speaker, the new Founder series, and more specifically, the flagship of that Founder series, the 120H that I have here. Now, the 120H's reported frequency response is 22 Hertz or lower in some rooms. And that's thanks to the active bass on the speaker. There's 1000 watts powering the bass drivers that you see, the 3 gigantic bass drivers on the speaker, which obviously allows the speaker to go down really, really deep. But at the same time, it is a hybrid speaker, meaning the mid-range and the high frequency is not powered. And I like it that way because now the mid-range and the high frequency can be powered through your integrated amplifiers or your amplifiers or rest of the stereo chain that you might have going on. And this really allows the flexibility to tune your mid-range and high frequency to your liking, at the same time allowing the bass to really express itself. It's kind of like having active subwoofers built into your speakers. And to furthermore, if you look around the speaker, there is no port. So you may simply think, oh, this must be a sealed design, but however, there is a port, and the port is located at the bottom of the speaker. So this allows a few things. First of all, it allows you to be more flexible in setting up the speakers for bass response because it is not dependent on the distance of the wall as much, and that's the key, as much, because the port is directly related to the floor. And this is something that we have seen in other speakers like Sonos Fabers or some other speakers that we have seen on this channel before that has a bottom port design that is proven to be less sensitive to the boundaries of the room for bass responses. So you're about to be mind blown just like I was about the amount of technology and innovation that goes into this speaker. First of all, the PPA lens. And if you've seen my bookshelf speaker review of the Founder series, you probably already know about the PPA lens, and this allows the phase alignment to be correct, and this allows you to in turn have great imaging capabilities of the speaker. Now, often than not, a lot of speakers that have this kind of technology or some type of technology to allow for better phase alignment or phase correction or whatever it is, usually it doesn't really improve imaging as much to my ears, but this really, really nails it. And Paradigm not only has proof that this lens does its job, but I can hear it. I can readily hear it in my room that the imaging is spectacular on this speaker, and probably because of the PPA lens. And when it comes to the tweeter also has the PPA lens implemented. And also the waveguide on the tweeter allows you to have great dispersion characteristics so that you get a large sweet spot, large soundstage, and so on. So all this together allows the speaker to sound really, really powerful with authoritative bass and really, really phase coherent imaging perfection in the mid-range and high frequencies. So if you thought the technology ended there, you are wrong. This has technology packed out the wazoo So this speaker has room correction, it has ARC. And so ARC is a room correction that has been in the Paradigm family for a very long time. They've developed it, they mastered it, and they have implemented it on the speaker. So what it does is in the back of the speaker, you get a USB port that is just above the binding post. And then you get a microphone and a microphone stand, and you get a USB cable, a very long USB cable to plug into the speaker left and right channel. And then you go to the software on the Paradigm's website, you download it, you launch it, and then you run a room correction, and it basically listens to your room and then corrects for those frequencies that need a little boost, that needs to be brought down a little bit. And this is obviously the setup process of the speaker. And this setup process is intuitive, it's fast, it's amazing in its outcome, because in my room, for example, I am pretty heavily treated in my room space and all that kind of stuff, so the correction was minimal. But let's say you're in a room where there is no room treatment, that you don't have absorption or whatever, and you have a certain problem like my room upstairs. Now, a little sharing here, before I made this room into my listening room, I was testing all the rooms I have in this house to make sure to get a room that I can work with. And one of the rooms upstairs was a candidate until I found and measured a 50 Hertz node, a heavy dip around 50 Hertz region. So I didn't want to fix it. It was kind of hard to fix that with room treatment. So I just let go. I was like, okay, I'm not going to deal with that. And what that really means is that if I were to use that room, I would have to always run subs testing speakers, because it's going to inherently dip down that 50 Hertz, which allows me to not review speakers very accurately. Well, I put the Paradigms in that room, and it just brought the 50 Hertz back. I could see it on the graph, I could hear it, and everything sounded really good with the Paradigms. And I can possibly say that in that room, the Paradigm 120H is probably the only speaker that sounds full, impactful, and correct. So there are definitely certain places and applications where room correction wins, because it just can't be done, or it can, but it will take a very extensive time and research on your part to get that corrected. But that's not all. Not only that, but even like the feet on the speaker, it's just mind-blowing because of the amount of technology that goes into it. When I was actually putting on the feet of the speaker, I noticed how high quality the spike was. And then I realized that they had this called shock mount technology, which allows to decouple the speaker from the floor 2 times instead of just one. And there's like a bunch of technology that goes into it. And this technology is transferred to how they mount the drivers internally in the cabinet, so that the woofers, the drivers, are all kind of separate from the cabinet, so that the resonances don't travel from the cabinet to the woofer and vice versa. So all these little details really add up to making the speakers sound the way they do, and also the way they look. And just by going over briefly of how they look, well, first of all, they look gorgeous. First of all, there's no screws you can find in the front baffle of the speaker. Often I see a beautiful speaker and there's all a bunch of screwdrivers holding the driver in place. And sometimes it's not a big deal because the cast is, black, but it's better to not have any screws in the front if you want an elegant, sleek look. And that's what you get here on the Paradigm 120H. Now they have 4 finishes. They have the walnut, which is the finish I got for the bookshelf speakers. And then I have the midnight cherry. Now the midnight cherry I thought would look awesome because the pictures looked awesome. Now I need to talk to Paradigm to see who took those pictures, because as you can see here, it is so glossy and a bit of a dark finish that even when I'm shining bright studio lights on it, it's just so reflective that it just seems to kind of not appear as attractive as in the photos. But at certain angles, you can catch it and it's just beautiful. But ultimately, my personal choice would be the walnut finish because it's not glossy. I think I can use it for home theater purposes as well. So if I'm choosing this speaker, I'm getting the non-gloss versions of it. Aside from that, the side profile is actually really nice. It has this curvature to it instead of having this, big box. You can kind of see the curve there, and it's really nicely finished. Everything is very, very robust looking. It doesn't seem like a speaker that's gonna go away in a few years. It's something that I feel like I can pass down to my children, and I'm pretty young. I'm not even married yet, so that's kind of a big statement, but you get the point. It seems like a speaker that will last and last and last. So no real complaints about the finish, the craftsmanship, and the look of the speakers. They're absolutely gorgeous speakers, in my opinion, at this price point. Can it get better than this? Because it has really deep bass. It brings back notes where, there's a dip. Well, it brings it back with room correction, and it sounds linear, neutral, yet it's dynamic, contrasty. Imaging is spectacular everywhere. Great sound staging for a floor stander. Now it's not gonna have as wide of a floor, as a soundstage as a bookshelf speaker or other speakers meant for great sound staging like horn speakers or whatever, but it is mesmerizing in how far it stretches out and how deep the soundstage goes on a floor standard like this while having really impactful and deep bass at the same time. That is something that is kind of rare. And on top of that, the mid-range and high frequency is silky smooth. It is neutral, it is balanced, it's never shouting or bright whatsoever. Now, in my Paradigm Founder Series, the bookshelf speaker review, the 40B, I said the brightness on that speaker was tad bit bright for my liking. On the 120H, I'm almost convinced that the circuitry, the crossover circuitry is slightly different or something is done to it because the high frequency is much more smoother. It is much less bright. And so maybe that's the room correction. I don't know what it is, but in my room, the sound is never bright. It is very neutral. It's dynamic, controlled, and it kind of reminds me of the old JBL speaker that I really liked with those active woofers, but in a more controlled way, in a more modern package, in a more modern sound kind of way. And again, having the bass section taken care of by the active system allows the speaker to be very, very sensitive at 92 dB, which allows you to pair it up with multitude of different gear, including low-powered solid-state amplifiers or tube amplifiers. At the end of the day, you will have no problems running these speakers with any amplifiers. Now, you may be thinking, well, can I just plug a cheap amplifier into the mid-range and high frequency because, it's going to room correct anyways and make everything balanced and sound awesome? Well, the thing is that the sound staging, the imaging capability, the tonality of the mid-range and high frequency, the snappiness, the brightness level is all contributed with what you plug into the speakers because, like I said, it's a hybrid. The bass is active, but the mid-range and a high frequency allows you flexibility in what you pair up with. And definitely, the higher quality amplifier you plug into, the more you get out of the speaker. And not just in price, but for example, if I plug in a tube amplifier to the speakers, giving you that wider dispersion characteristic while having pinpoint imaging. Now the imaging is slightly sacrificed with tube amplifiers compared to solid-state amplifiers, but we all know that. So there is definitely still flexibility in catering the speaker to your taste. It's just that the bass is always there. It's kind of like having bass out of the equation as a problem, and then you play around with the mid-range and high frequency, which is amazing and exactly something that a lot of people might be looking for because, let's face it, tuning a subwoofer is not exactly the same as having room correction and a subwoofer built in at the same time into a speaker. This is a high technology speaker that tries to make your life a lot easier and simplify things for you, but at the same time allowing you to play around with some stuff in the mid-range and high frequency so that you can cater the sound to your liking as well. Now, the only downside to that is, again, the bass is not flexible, meaning that whatever the software or the speaker feels that is correct in your room, which is the neutrality, right, neutral point, that's going to be what you're getting. If you're a bass head and you want elevated bass, that's not gonna be happening because you can't elevate the bass like you would on a dial on a subwoofer, for example. But then, at the same time, if you run a room correction on a subwoofer, it's gonna be the exact same way. The room correction is gonna try to flatten out the frequency. And if you decide to bypass room correction and just crank up the subwoofer, for example, then it's going to still have those nodes in your room. It's not gonna correct for anything. So all in all, if you're looking for a bass texture, really impactful, punchy bass, like nothing comes to mind when I hear the bass region, right? Nothing comes to mind as a negative for me, right? Impactful, textured, punchy, dynamic, bombastic, digs really low. These are all the words that I use in my reviews to describe bass. Well, Paradigm's bass has that all, despite being an active, bass. It's probably one of the best implementations I've heard in terms of active bass. It's just controlled, dynamic, linear, and it's fabulous. So that portion, the bass portion, is done and done. The mid-range and high frequency, like I said, is based on taste as well, but at the same time, for me, it is neutral. If neutrality is what you're looking for, if you just want to hear music for long periods of time and hear it neutral and naturally as possible, as close as the artist intended, then this is probably the speaker. It's really, really good at that. It has really pinpoint imaging. You can draw it out, but without the fatigue that some speakers, may have. For example, it has the similar type of drawing capability that you may find in Focal speakers. Meaning, when I hear some Focal or Magical speakers, I can literally draw where these instruments are because they're so exact in place. Well, you get that same effect with these speakers, except you don't get the brightness associated with some other speakers that you may have heard in the past. For me, I've heard Focal speakers and Magical speakers in the past. I appreciate the way they sound, and even the Founder 40B series, I appreciate the imaging capability, but the brightness level is just a tad bit too much for me. Well, these speakers, the 120H, is not that. It has all those imaging capabilities, but without the brightness level, which is why I can say that I can probably live with these speakers. Now, I realize that this is not an inexpensive speaker, but having the Paradigm Founder Series speakers here in person and having heard it for the last few months, I can promise you that the quality is there for a price range like this. It's actually a good bargain. And I can't believe I'm saying that because it is a high price point, but at the same time, you have to think about all the technology and all the innovation that went into this speaker. If this was coming from a small company with limited resources, then this speaker must be really expensive. But I can say that this speaker is less expensive because of economy of cost coming from a bigger company like Paradigm, who has all the resources, who has a huge facility here in Mississauga. So they're really able to pack all these technology and technology advancements that they have done over the years step by step and allow for the cost to consumers be much less. At the end of the day, if you want a speaker that is packed with technology, that has actual technology, just not technology, but technology that transfers into your listening room, and you ask me which speakers are those, I would definitely point to the Paradigms because by far, these are the speakers that I can live with and I can appreciate the technology because it actually transfers to your listening room 100% of the time. So that's pretty much it from me. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was valuable. I hope it helped you out. I hope it was entertaining. And if it was, please click the like button and also subscribe for future videos just like this. And I'll see you guys on the next one.